Diyos na mapagpala, hiling namin ang pagpapalaganap ng kaalaman sa bawat nilalang. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. O Diyos ng awa, bigyan mo kami ng kakayahan sa pagtataguyod ng pakikipag-ugnayan sa bawat isa.
Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. Sa ngalan pangurungon, panguduyog, Espiritong kalatamnon. Hayay makiwala-wala, hayay makiwala-wala kami. Hayay makiwala-wala kita kami.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Welcome to this webinar on merging artistic expression and scientific excellence. My name is Dr. Mario Domingo, and I'll be one of your moderators for today's webinar. By way of introduction, I'm a research scientist and associate director for research and evaluation at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I was also a past president of PAASE, being its president in 2022-2023. It's truly a pleasure to see so many of you joining us for this timely and thought-provoking conversation. I'll be joined by my co-moderator, Dr. Wendell Capili, whom I will invite to briefly introduce himself and help guide our conversation this morning. Dr. Capili.
Magandang umaga po sa lahat. Ako po si Jose Wendell Capili, Professor of English and Comparative Literature at the University of the Philippines, Siliman. I'm also member at large of the Governing Board of the National Research Council of the Philippines. Magandang umaga po sa lahat. Dr. Mario.
Salamat, Dr. Capili. So this webinar is proudly sponsored by the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, or PAASE, and the National Research Council of the Philippines, or NRCP. Two institutions deeply committed to advancing knowledge, innovation, and national development. So ngayon pong umaga, we explore a powerful idea that science and art are not opposing fields, but complementary partners. So when rigorous scientific inquiry meets creative artistic expression, new ways of thinking emerge, ways that foster innovation, deepen cultural understanding, supporting more holistic human progress. So we are going to break down the silos between these so-called two cultures. We open space for richer and more human-centered solutions to complex problems. Before we begin for our main program, it is our honor to invite the President of the National Research Council of the Philippines to deliver the opening remarks and formally set the tone for today's discussion. Dr. Ninette de las Peñas. Ma'am.
Good morning to all of you joining us from the Philippines, and a warm good evening to all our colleagues and friends in the United States and wherever else in the world you may be tuning in from today. So on behalf of the Department of Science and Technology, National Research Council of the Philippines, it is my distinct honor and genuine pleasure to welcome each of you to this webinar, Merging Artistic Expression and Scientific Excellence. This gathering also carries a deeper significance for us at NRCP. Today's event is among the first collaborative activities with PAASE. We have an ongoing memorandum of understanding, and while it's still in its final stages of formalization, we already are in collaboration, building something meaningful together. So the theme of today's webinar is one that resonates deeply with me. I'm a mathematician, but for the past years, I have been working with mathematics applied to art and cultural heritage. And I believe, not just me, but all of us in the scientific community believe that art and science are not really strangers to one another. But the truth is, as history has always shown us, science and art are really interrelated. Leonardo da Vinci saw no contradiction between painting and anatomy. Maria Goeppert-Mayer also found elegance, a word that belongs equally to poetry and physics in the shell structure of the atomic nucleus. Our very own Jose Rizal, one of the most celebrated minds the Philippines has ever produced, was once a novelist, a sculptor, a physician, and a scientist. So the boundaries we draw between disciplines are more often than not boundaries of our own making. So today we gather to dissolve some of these boundaries, to explore the fertile generative space where creativity and rigor meet, where a brushstroke and a formula can, in different ways, illuminate the same truth. We are very much privileged to have with us three brilliant minds who embody this spirit. Dr. Joseph Palis, professor at the Department of Geography, University of the Philippines; Dr. Brian Bantugan, regular member of the Division of Humanities at NRCP; and Dr. Mark Loyola, regular member of the Division of Mathematical Sciences at NRCP, and I believe also a PAASE member. I'm confident that their insights will challenge, inspire, and expand the way we think about the intersection of art and science. We are equally grateful to our moderators, Dr. Mariano Domingo and Dr. Jose Wendell Capili, whose own distinguished careers reflect the very interdisciplinarity we celebrate today. So we are in excellent hands. To our partners at PAASE, thank you so much. And NRCP is proud to call you our partners, and we look forward to many collaborations ahead of us. And to everyone watching today, whether you are a researcher, an artist, an educator, a student, or simply a curious mind, welcome. You belong in this conversation because science at its deepest level is an act of imagination, and so is art. So on behalf of the National Research Council of the Philippines, welcome and let us begin.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. De las Penas, the President of the National Research Council of the Philippines. So without further ado, we'll be starting our session. Each speaker will have 15 to 20 minutes, followed by a Q&A session after all the three presenters have talked. We hope today's exchange will inspire everyone to see the possibility and even the necessity of scientists, artists among us, to discover new strategies for interdisciplinary collaboration. So I will now introduce Dr. Joseph Palis, my good friend. So Dr. Palis's talk will be about geonarratives so far. That's the title of his talk. Spatial storytelling from precarious life worlds to fictional cities. So Dr. Palis is a professor at the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, UP Diliman's Department of Geography. He teaches graduate and undergraduate courses on cultural geographies, counter cartographies, island and archipelagic geographies, Humanities, and graduate seminar courses from geographies of media to violent geographies. Kapag ginugal po niyo si Dr. Palis, you will most probably see a copy of his dissertation on cinematic geography. I think it's Archipelago Cinema is the title, and you'll be amazed of how creative he is as a geographer. So he's an active member of the American Association of Geographers, Philippine Geographical Society, and the American Geographical Society. He co-edits the Palgrave Macmillan Pivot series devoted to media geographies. Dr. Palis received his PhD from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Dr. Joseph Palis, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to see you again. Of course, all the members of the NRCP and PAASE. The last time I spoke for PAASE was in 2022 the year after I became a member. This was, of course, when we were all in global lockdown, and uh, times were very different then. So here I am again presenting a continuation of the project that I've been working on for some time. So I'm just gonna share, but I can only share if my picture is out of the screen.
Our technical team.
Okay, thank you very much. Um, um, okay, so I'm gonna presenting a project I'm working on. It's called Geonarrative So Far. It is a homage to the late geographer Doreen Massey, who came up with the term story so far because stories are never complete and it's always ongoing, it's dynamic, and it doesn't stay in one place. And it's about stories really from, as I call, precarious lives to fictional cities. Perhaps in the interest of time, I may just cut a few of those case studies. I prepared, I think, five uh, case studies, and we'll see what we can do. But I feel like I need to at least provide us with a background first. So again, with your indulgence, just let me know if I'm over time, and I could easily just switch to the concluding portion of it. Just to give you an outline of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to situate my talk to the culture in cartography called counter mapping or counter cartography, which we will learn later on what it is all about. Speak about the use of stories in telling uh, lives of people, and then present four, as I call them, four ecologies, and then something else that's outside of the Philippines. Um, in, in under personal cartographies, and perhaps come back to a kind of reflection in the end. So, just to give you an idea of it, I think some of us here who may be of a certain age remember the time when we were all required by UP to take ROTC or ROTC, as we call it. Um, and I remember my platoon commander would always provide us with a definition of map. And strangely, much as I was not a huge fan of this, uh, of ROTC, I remember the definition of map, and I remember him saying it's the graphical representation of the Earth. And of course, that was light years before I went into geography. And since I went to geography, I realized there are more versions of what map in mapping. Uh, uh, than just the definition in military science. Max Eckert, for example, a German cartographer, mentioned quite famously that it is a portrayal on the plane of the surface of the Earth. So this is suggesting that mapping is always just premised on being two-dimensional. Arthur Robinson, himself another geographer who works in the industry of cartography, said it is about your neighborhoods, the surroundings, or the milieu, as he calls it. And then Dennis Wood said something. Dennis Wood is a radical cartographer, so you may. I just have to preface that so that you will know that he's being sarcastic when he said a map is an image proclaiming its objective neutrality because there's no such thing as objective neutrality, even in science and engineering, where certain kinds of projects get priorities over others, and that tells us about certain inherent and embedded politics within the ranks of people who choose which project gets funded and which do not or not given importance. The same with mapping, the visual representation of the Earth. Now, if you will look at this map on the right side, you would see, of course, it's upside down, but it toys with your idea of cartographic imagination. If you reverse the world map that we've come to know so well in our minds, you would see that perhaps for the first time we realize there's so much water. And it's not a coincidence that 70% of the earth is actually made up of water. But we do not really see it because we are, as what one um, post-colonial scholar from Oceania once said, it is there's a bias for lithosphere. We mostly focus on the soil or the landforms or the continent rather than the seas. talk about the currents, the tides, and many other things. Of course, maps, just like many things in life, have politics in it. As later on, John Brian Harley, a beloved cartographer in the Geographic Academy, has mentioned that there's always politics in it. More specifically, it's not so much as what is depicted as much as what are erased and what's not mentioned, what is known as the silences in maps. Definitely, cartographers manufacture power because they are mediators of what could represent the truth. There's also this dilemma that many of us face, and it's probably not just in cartography, but more about how do we visualize when we visualize a certain information for public consumption, aren't we also falling into the trap of bolstering our own interests, and and of course, definitely, because our subjectivity lies in on what makes certain projects that we do much more prominent. I take inspiration from Palestinian scholar Edward Said, who said before that the language of power, really, the mapping and most of the things that we do is pretty much a proposition. And I'm going to provide you with competing examples also of counter cartography. J.B. Harley famously said it is a language of power. So when someone produces a map for you to see, it is essentially what one person thought is her or their version of spatial phenomena. John Krieger and Dennis Wood talk about it as propositions. All right. So one is language of power, one is proposition. It's giving you options or avenues or glimpses of what uh, they feel the world is like. Nancy Peluso was the one who actually coined the term counter mapping in 1995. Nancy Lee Peluso, who's now based in UC Berkeley, I believe, she did research in Kalimantan in Indonesia, and she was doing research among the wood processors in the forest. And she realized that much of the maps that were produced by the state do not quite correspond to the maps that were done by the people themselves living in embodied in lived in environments. So she mentioned, I'm just quoting a quote from her article. She said, to capture counter cartography is to capture the distinctiveness of contemporary third world mapping politics, which inscribes people's versions of the truth as well. Many of us are familiar with Rebecca Solnit, who was made an honorary geographer in 2023 at the American Association of Geographers. She's been such a champion of geographic research and undertakings, and I really recommend the books that she's written. But especially a field guide to getting lost, which is a beautiful evocation of place and how to capture it, and about memories and family and uncapturable past. Um, Here in now that I'm segueing to the use of stories, later on it will hopefully make sense when I talk about geonarratives. Hayden Lorimer mentioned that when you talk about stories, they can be seen as entry points to the working out of ideas in vernacular or local contexts. So it's like trying to raise the profile of certain uh, uh, undertakings or what's going on. Um, for people to uh, think of as part of their reality. Donna Houston, a professor from Australia, mentioned stories are full of resonance, memory, and evidence. They reflect discernible and powerful truths. It is one version of it. Uh, because, of course, some of us could relate to this. Others probably will think of it much more in the context of whose truths are we talking, privileging, whose stories count, who gets left out. Rebecca Solnit again, I just wanted to use this rather poetic evocation of story. To be without a story is to be lost in the vastness of a world that spreads in all directions, like Arctic tundra or sea ice. And finally, full disclosure, I'm part of this collective, which just came out with a book just actually just a few days ago. So I want you to seek them out if you can. It's open. You can download it. It's open access by Paul Grid Macmillan. And we said something of this nature that stories have been used by and for the powerful to romanticize, launder, naturalize, and justify systems and acts of domination, exploitation, and violence. So all is not well in storyland, so to speak, right? Like there are ways with which people could weaponize stories to promote certain kinds of agenda. Now let me just bring you to the discussion that hopefully marries mapping and cartography. Sorry, stories. Bell mentioned when you talk about geonarratives, it's about the meaningful place experience. Now, some of us here who must have read Ifu Tuan's book on humanistic geography may also question what is meaningful, who decides what is meaningful, and who are we talking about meaning that everybody subscribes, right? It can be uh, very individually specific. Mipo Kwan mentioned it's the interpretation of oral and life histories and biographies. And if you will allow a little bit of indulgence, I published a book chapter in Routledge 4 years ago now, 2022, where I talked about geonarratives and I said it's about place writing that not on that define, meaning to portray, to depict, but also rewrite and imagine a place based on specific subjectivities of people. Let me bring you to a source of inspiration from a Native American, William Least Heathmoon, who wrote this book, Prairie Earth, who actually came up with a term called deep mapping, where he talked about the layers of stories as part of his uh, group in Kansas, and it's all about the series of like the GIS overlay, so to speak, right? You comprehend the many layers of memory, experience, perceptions of a particular place over time through the wide variety of narratives that are anchored there. So it's a very place anchored or place specific kind of acknowledgement that stories can bring to life, just like maps. At this point, let me now segue into one of the first case study, and I apologize in advance that we may not go into in-depth discussion of it, but this is a way to hopefully whet your appetite and explore more about this uh, topics. In 2019, then Chancellor Michael Tan welcomed the Luma to UP Diliman, and as part of the Bakwit school, Bakwit being uh, coming from the word evacuate because of the dispossession that they experienced in Mindanao. So they went to UP, and I was one of the teachers who provided them with instructions about mapping. And to be honest with you, I would have to say, upon reflection, that I totally did it wrong. I over prepared a series of slides about mapping when I should be doing co production of knowledge with them and asking them what they feel the land is from their own life worlds, which of course happened after 5 minutes. And I totally had to abandon certain things that I do. I do have to say that there are conventions of mapping, but I'm also willing to learn and listen from their own stories when they do not even regard cardinal points or coordinates as something important in the way they lead their lives. So when we did a generative mapping with them, with a colleague from geography, uh, we asked them to create their life worlds or the place that they have in southern Mindanao. And here's what they drew. If you look at the map, the right side, of course, it's hand drawn, and they their concept of busa, which of course could mean monsters in Philippine folklore, um, uh, uh, typified or is personified by the military presence that you can see at the kind of near bottom of the illustration. Their own world says that they can be safe within the enclave of their own uh, place, and outside of it, there are busaos who might get them. And actually, there's another slide, but I'm just going to skip it for a moment. And so these are just examples of narratives that they created in their own terms. Another one that we did before is about the disruption of home. And here I have two case stories within this. I did the first one. This was, understand this is like a few days before the global lockdown in March 2020. And I managed to get one. And I invited the female contingents in UP Diliman, alumni, uh, professors, students, staff, or residents in the area. And one of them created this story, and she did a collage of home life. And if you can see from the one that she created, it says "Remember 1997, 2017," which is about the collapse of her own marriage as a depiction of her own life, told in fragmented. Uh, torn academic oval of UP Diliman, as well as pictures of paintings um, that I provided from calendars, actually. So what was interesting about it was the storying part of it. When they tell the story of their lives, it assumes a different kind of nuance that maps that are two-dimensional do not quite capture. And perhaps uh, we can relate to this because maps really do not speak. They should communicate effectively, but the nuance could sometimes get lost when this the performativity of telling a story is not there. And it tells the story of what one woman who's a professor in UP had to navigate in order to be a sole parent to to children, and how to balance her career as a professor as well. The other one is a bit more heartbreaking. Was we did this project. Actually, it was my student Joey Ace Peralta who did this project, and I was involved in it as her advisor. But she did her own geo-narrative among the uh, residents, the older adults, as they call it in demography. I just wanted to make sure that we just put here the aged, elderly, even if in demography they no longer use the word elderly because of its pejorative meaning, but older adults. But when she did this project among those who were abandoned by their own, or living alone or abandoned by their own children, and she asked about versions of home, this is what they came up with. On top, you could see a picture of plants and animals, which is the imagined home of one older adult. The one below is heartbreaking because she was trying to create a house, and after the fourth try, she did manage to create a cone-like house. And upon closer investigation, that older adult was a victim of elder abuse from her own children. So some of these layers of stories do come out when they tell the stories, or when they are comfortable telling this. If I may just have to say this quickly, although I will say this at the end of my presentation, that ethical conduct has been observed in conducting this research by asking permission and anonymizing uh, the names for data privacy in order not to have data privacy breach. The third one happened during the time of the pandemic, and we did actually still do a geonarrative mapping via Zoom. And this was in UP Diliman. And what was interesting about it was if you look at one of the things that, okay, I'll just show this to you in the next slide, perhaps. Uh, if you look at that picture there, one of the things that one of the respondents said was every time it rains, they look at it. The puddle of rain is like lake na sa aming mga PWD. And of course, when you put yourself, or you become empathetic and put yourself in the position of someone who is differently abled, you will see that certain things that able-bodied people like you and me do not quite imagine what they go through when they look at certain geophysical hazards affecting their life could mean to them. We did one too in Bulacan, and some of the stories are very. Again, the narrative that you see on the slide may come across as just a survival narrative, but in the telling of it, sometimes it can be a space of catharsis for them, telling about how they eventually survived the mountain range that that pillaged their barrio when something like this happens. And of course, there are maps that they did with this, but I just wanted to focus the story part of it here. Here we go. Sorry about that. I'll just repeat this. So this is one example of that in Bulacan. If you look at the picture, it's rather blurred. I apologize, but these are representations of how they view their land. And when you look at this one, it's a house. But if you look at the one at the left, you would see little arrows, and that's when they said when the water is up to here, we start to pack our things. When the water level is up to a certain level, then we do have to start leaving because once the water reaches the third level, we sh we might drown. So these are folkloric, perhaps vernacular ways of representing how how they prepare for disaster. And again, interestingly, it is in the storytelling part, the geo-narrative part, that makes it more interesting because it brings the two-dimensionality to vivid life. Uh, the penultimate one is the one we did in PASE. And this was, by the way, the picture that you see was done by a firefighter in order to show how they prepare for disaster. And if you notice, in this particular one, there is co-production of a map. So people were involved in doing it, and there's a lot of discussions in it. And the result is something like this, right? So Barangay LGU, you would see a rather harmonious way of building trust, confidence, and solidarity if people work together with the LGU. Now, probably a discourse analysis would suggest that this might be aspirational, that this might be a way of saying that, we are important in your lives, right? But nobody could deny the fact that there is a nod, or a very evocative nod to conservation and helping together as a collective that could produce desirable results. Another picture I wanted to show was done by the youth sector, and notice the robustness of the trees, as there is a connection, according to them, with how people live their lives and the connection with environmental protection in their own terms. I thought that was a wonderful uh, uh, evocation of this, perhaps a little too idealistic, but a little idealism doesn't, will go a long way, especially in our what's happening in our world at the moment. So those are the four ecologies that tell you that they can be maps that can be created in their own terms. And I do have to say that maybe the use of the word map can be misleading because they usually think of it as something that's state produced with legends, with latitudes, with all kinds of things, when in fact we encourage them to just create in their own terms. So perhaps one criticism I have with this approach is use the word image or a vernacular version of it. Now, finally, in terms of personal cartographies, I was on sabbatical last year and went to York University as a visiting scholar, and I asked if it is possible to do a geonarrative mapping among geography students from the class of Professor Ranu Basu in, uh, on urban geography. And I asked the students to create a fictional city in Toronto. So what I wanted them to do is to create what they feel are lacking in the current district that they live in. And here's the result of what they've done. It's interesting to see that some of them, from in all these three maps, it will tell you that when they tell the stories, that some of the things that were portrayed here are the things that are lacking in the areas where they are. If you look at the one on the top, on the right side, rightmost top of it, it's an interesting story about how a student says that in the district where he lives, there is playground for children, but children are absent, notably absent in the area, as though it is just for show. And when I asked him the question why, he said it's just like the way it is. It's more for aesthetics rather than for something lived in, which I thought was very interesting. Perhaps I could talk a little bit more about this in the Q&A, if you will allow, but just for the time being, just to show you that a geonarrative can be enabled to create ideas of what fictional cities can be like, right? So in wrapping up this, I come up with reflections because Doreen Massey is such an influential scholar in my life who mentioned about stories so far. I would rather than say conclusion, I would call this a conclusion so far or geo-narrative so far, because mindful that stories are never ending and they are ongoing as we speak. They're dynamic and never complete. They are partial and they're snapshots. In our generative mapping, I always have to emphasize that these are not the final ones, but they are snapshots of what's going on at the moment. They can change next week, perhaps even the next day, as people's subjectivities with institutions of power, with places change as well. And it does intersect the art of mapping and storytelling. It intersect with our own bodies, ideologies, natures, emotions, affect, and etc. And if we think about it, place writing, or in the case of place writing in terms of creating geonarrative maps, are really about fleeting moments or fleeting stories, and they are just happen to be captured the moment cartographically. So it brings back to my first point about them being just snapshots and never the final story itself. And also, I noticed that the performativity of storytelling create its own space of mapping in itself, because the vibrancy that come with it, something that you cannot see in two-dimensional maps. Also, perhaps the word map is not a useful term to use when doing generative mapping, because it automatically makes them think that these are professional cartographic images, when in fact they can self-create, which is the reason why we kind of call them personal cartography, or to draw images. And also, I would like to emphasize that these are not supposed to be in a way authoritative or official, because they can be a subjective take of one person. It can be authoritative in that regard, but they're far from being the official grand narrative, because it is only experienced by certain groups, people, collectives as well. And the whole thing is the whole mapping undertaking only comes to life when we realize, similar to intersectionality, the multi-layered realities that we all go through, the plural, the multiple uh, realities and experiences that we all live in, come together when they have to create uh, something as simple as depicting a home or fictional city, or preparing for disaster. Thank you very much. I'd just like to acknowledge the following institutions and people who contributed so importantly in the development of this project. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Joseph. Your talk really compellingly showed how geography and mapping are never neutral, right? But deeply shaped by politics and power. So through map stories and narratives of memory, your case studies also highlighted how mapping becomes a tool for people's survival, resilience, and the preservation of lived experience. So your case studies also showed how mapping can be both an analytic practice and also a medium for expressing a lived experience. So maraming salamat. So our next speaker will be introduced by Dr. Capili.
Yes, thanks very much, Dr. Mario. I'll be introducing Dr. Brian Bantugan, who will be discussing art as a nexus of science, innovation, and human-centered design. Dr. Brian Bantugan is an interdisciplinary researcher with training across natural and material sciences, humanities, and social sciences. He holds degrees in fine arts, broadcast communication, and communication with cognates in anthropology and Philippine studies across disciplines at the University of the Philippines, where he was a consistent university scholar. He had led research, innovation, and development initiatives at St. Paul University, Manila, and served as a science and technology R&D leader, TOST, during the pandemic. His academic work focuses on mentoring researchers, developing resource courses, and strengthening research capacity in resource challenge schools nationwide. He has extensive CV profile, but I think it's best if you all hear from him. Let's give a very warm round of applause to Dr. Brian Bantugan. Dr. Brian, welcome. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wendell. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, can you see it now? Okay, so while the slide is loading, I'd like to tell everyone that I'll be approaching this presentation from a more experiential and pragmatic approach, primarily because the practice is where the art and the sciences come together. That's where they meet normally. So I'll be presenting a number of cases where you will see the intersections happening and where art and science really blend well together. Okay, so let me start with a musical. No, I'm sure you've seen Les Miserables, whether on video or you've seen it live, no, in Broadway. But let me just read the lyric of one of the songs there. There was a time when men were kind, when their voices were soft, and their worlds inviting. There was a time when love was blind and the world was a song and the song was exciting. There was a time then it all went wrong. So reading it has a different feel. No, it has a different kind of experience for those who are in the audience or those who are listening. But definitely, this particular lyric wasn't meant to be read like that. No, it was meant to be experienced with music. And music gives us something more than just the conventional messages captured by words. Okay. So in a musical, an actor typically begins to sing when the emotional intensity of the scene surpasses the capacity of spoken dialogue. So that is when you normally have characters begin to sing, no, in the middle of something so emotionally explosive, no. So it doesn't just happen anytime. Okay. So for me, art uh, should be defined this way. Now, it is through art that we are able to express what known language cannot make intelligible. So art is what makes the tacit perceptible using language beyond words. Art is knowledge made known through experience in the artist and the audience. So it is a meeting place of people who communicate a very um, uh, volatile, very say non-specific kind of message. No, it's not stuck to a convention. It actually expands. No, as it is being shared. No, it's more like poetry. It's not the meanings are not fixed. No, it tends to explode. Okay. So let me distinguish design. So design is the manipulation of the mechanics of art to achieve a goal, to solve a problem or to make life better using available resources and working around constraints. So if you're in the material world and you aim to achieve a goal, art is a way of making use of what is available and um, sort of crossing the gaps, no, or breaking the boundaries, no, that will curtail you from achieving your goal. And then let me distinguish now this innovation. So innovation is a process of making two or more seemingly incongruous, unrelated, or disjointed ideas synergize to achieve a breakthrough. And we normally say there's innovation if we have a sense of that breakthrough happening. So what I can say about art is it tends to evade linearity, it evades singular order or simple organization. Now, every time you look at a painting, every time you see a sculpture, every time you see an installation, there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye. So I can say it cannot be subsumed under science. It is not better or worse than science. It is not another science. Art flourishes in not in simplification, but in ambiguity. Art is materialized complexity. So what I'm saying here is a lot of the art that we encounter, the artists that you meet actually flourish in this space of ambiguity. They do not find it problematic. No, it's a space that allows them to create. So I'd like to show a little bit of a map of where complexity is. And I'm highlighting complexity because it is this space of complexity where art and technology normally meet. Okay, so the farther and farther we get from agreement, no, in the subjective reality, and the more uncertain things become, no, in the objective reality, the more complex things are. And art, because it's not specific to a particular phenomenon, tends to expand to the domains of complexity. So let me give you a very thought-provoking example of how art has actually sort of penetrated the um, medical field. No, there was a professor in the U.S., a musician, who, when he saw how children were suffering from the conventional treatment of cancer to children. So as a musician, he tried to look for alternative modalities, and he's very familiar with like frequencies or sound, no? So what he did was he tried to work in a biology department, brought together a team, and then they started experimenting with variations in frequencies, combinations of frequencies until they hit the jackpot. Okay. So this is Dr. Anthony Holland. He has a TEDx talk online, and he used or created used the James Bayer's resonant frequency therapy device. So it's existing, but it allowed him to explore his idea. And the idea is to find the right frequency that would shatter the cancer cell. So they discovered that there is a particular frequency, and it's called the 11th harmonic, that can uh, sort of destroy cancer cells in the human body. And from a visual perspective, this figure here will help us understand what the 11th harmonic is. It's actually a combination of the base frequency and the 11th, no, the 11th frequency. So you see now how the second, third, and fourth frequencies are. So the 11th will be somewhere up there, and there will be 11 peaks and valleys, no? So when you put these two together, you arrive at a frequency that shatters cancer cells. So it's called a harmonic because it's more than one frequency. So this is what I would term as a resonance medicine. So there's a particular kind of combination of frequencies, they resonate, and then it cures a particular health issue. Okay. You will see the image here. It makes the whole thing more understandable, but it's really different when you experience it. Okay, I think it is not this understanding of the frequency that allows us to see the magic of the resonance medicine. It is really listening to it that makes us appreciate, no, the value of this discovery. Now, in St. Paul, Manila, we have music therapy, no? And music therapy is way more complex than just harmonic, no? There's a lot of musical elements involved, no? And normally, when they use a music therapy to address many different kinds of challenges, no? From promoting wellness to promoting physical rehabilitation, there's this wide array of activities that they engage the patients in, and that facilitates a lot of the healing. Okay, so um, in one particular time, no, before the pandemic, I was working with a researcher from music therapy, and we were meeting with the cancer oncology doctors in PGH. and we were trying to explore the possibility of pain management using a particular musical, artifact. No? But during the meeting, I realized that they were practically working from different mindsets. No? The mindset of the music therapist is anchored on the idea that um, if there is a patient and that patient has a context, that music has to address that specific context of the patient using uh, the relevant options that music therapy can offer. Now, the other side, no, in PJH, they were actually looking for music medicine, meaning they were trying to look for a particular kind of musical artifact that if you subject it to the different cancer patients in the cancer ward of the PGH, there would likely be more effective pain management. So it's decontextualized. So you can see that the combinations of art and science in these two cases are quite different, and yet they're actually trying to do the same thing. No? But that difference would allow you to realize how important it is that we see the mindset that fuels music therapy, and we also see the mindset that fuels music medicine. Same goal, different approaches, but it's a combination of the arts and the sciences. Now, when we talk about art therapy, so I'm an artist, so I'm used to all these kinds of activities. I could say for a fact that art therapy is even more complex than music therapy because music is just a small component of the whole world of arts. And you'll need a lot of training to figure out how each particular option can actually address particular kinds of challenges. And the challenges are the same, no, as in music therapy. You can address wellness, no, needs, but also uh, look into emotional issues, pain management, working with stress, and so on and so forth. But the options now are quite uh, there's a lot more you can get from, not to address these issues in art therapy. I'd like to contrast this with therapeutic art. Okay, so therapeutic art is defined, no, in Neurolaunch, seemingly a well put together website, no, as an alternative name for art therapy. No, for me, if you don't understand art therapy or music therapy, it's easy to lump them together and say that they're synonymous. They're not. No, art therapy is a therapy that uses creative processes to achieve therapeutic goals. Therapeutic art is a creative process that may have therapeutic effects. So one is more strategic, one has protocols, the other one is more exploratory, one is uh, more towards experiencing, no, therapeutic effects, but definitely they're not the same. So what I'm pointing at here is that if you have a more complex mindset, you will begin to see that these two are quite different, and you will not lump them together. No, to think that they are the same dismisses the human agency that designs the therapy based on the client's context. So what I'm pointing at here is the simplistic thinking would definitely be very different from the complex thinker's idea of therapeutic art and art therapy. So in the coming together of art and science, I think it's very important that those who are involved should embrace complexity thinking. No? If you think about experiments, and if you think about the figure I showed to you earlier about that complex region, the experiment is more leaning towards the simple. Okay, but exploratory studies that are more characteristic of qualitative studies tend to gravitate towards the more complex. But when they work together, they have to be open to explore that complex area. No, they also need a qualitative mindset. And when I say qualitative mindset, they're supposed to be ready to encounter something that does not fit a box or the convention. And because there's a lot more uncertainty and disagreement, they have to be ready to talk to each other, to to uh, to um, flourish, no, in an environment where there's a lot of constructivism involved. So when I did a study in NRCP, no, I looked at the the artist advocates who were trying to help the people living with HIV/AIDS in the Philippines. Now, in the early in 2015 and before the pandemic, this was the concern. No, there was an HIV epidemic happening. So my idea then was to try to explore how come we have artists trying to involve themselves in averting this crisis. No, so I interviewed 70 artists from Manila, Visayas, in Cebu and Davao, and I tried to sort of understand where they're coming from. And I try to look at the ideas that drive them to be engaged, the groups that enable them to practice, and then the products that they use as advocacy materials. And I think this is important because these are the actual people that help um, build the intersection between art and the sciences. Um, Okay. So in a separate study, no, with psychology students and nursing students, I realized that when I asked them whether they believe that COVID-19 is the same as the COVID-19 virus is the same as the COVID-19 pandemic, almost 100% said they're the same. It cannot be, but that's how we are. That's how we think, no? So um, it says that the cause is the same as the effect. And therefore, what we saw was that the solution to the virus became the only solution to the pandemic, no, which I think is a big flaw, no, in the way we approach, no, social problems, no, even public health crises. So this should be it. The virus is not the pandemic. The cause is not the effect. The solution to the virus is not the solution to the pandemic. But who was involved in helping solve the problem of the pandemic? They're only the ones in the medical professions. Now, where are the teachers? Where are the philosophers? Where are the ethicists? Where are the social scientists and so on and so forth? We never heard from them. They were never asked to talk. In the area where there is a big question mark, that complex area, there was only one person or one field talking. And I think that's a big mistake. Okay? There should have been more opportunities for people from different fields to talk because that's the area of complexity that we need to be working on together. So the problems of the world is complex. The solutions we develop are quite simplistic and are forced to be such on complex problems. So that's a vaccine. Once you have the vaccine, it solves everything. We don't see the domestic violence. We don't see the mental health issues. We don't see the problem in economic marginalization. It solves everything. And I think that's a big mistake. So complex problems need complex solutions. So we need to raise or we need to form people who are able to navigate that area more comfortably. And artists are quite comfortable, no, in the area of ambiguity. So among those whom I interviewed, these are the ideas that they shared. No, people are complex. They're not just bodies. All are connected. It is difficult to control variables. Science is confusing. It is not very meaningful to a lot of people. And then change is multidimensional. Everyone should be involved. I'd like to highlight science is confusing because during the pandemic, a lot of people were just deferring to the orders of the government. They weren't really thinking objectively about it or searching for other answers or trying to come up with agreements with their communities and whatnot. So these are things that are quite valuable to the artist advocates I interviewed. They were also shaped by artistic affiliations, no, where they were trained in their art, no, where they were formed, no, holistically as students, no, educational affiliations, where they learned how to practice their art, the professional affiliations, and how they were able to access opportunities to solve an epidemic, and that's where the government affiliations came in. And I also was able to look into their artifacts, the different forms of art that they generated. And because they're kind of new and the digital technology sort of disturbed the landscape of art and technology, I started generating some new categories that do not necessarily align with the conventional categories of the fine arts or art in general. So I created like categories like vocal arts, like the use of the voice, verbal arts, the use of language, the visual arts, things that you can appreciate visually, video arts, visual with added motion, virtual and non-virtual, where the virtual realities actually merge into the real life spaces of people, and there's a lot of art involved there too. And how you combine these things together variably would constitute the variable composite arts. So these are all categories I saw that were very much apparent in the digitized arts that the artist advocates use, to help solve the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So you can see here that the artist advocate is crucial. They're the ones that create the intersections. We need to have people like them, because otherwise we'll just be comfortable with our own silos and not create opportunities to talk. And they're the ones who to build the doors, build the windows that open. So I think we need to create social actors that are creative. They're the solutions to the problems that we need in our country. Now I'll give you an example of another kind of advocate. This is a plant advocate. Let me show you a very, very short video. Can you hear it? It's still buffering. Okay.
Can make
Okay.
noise.
All right. Let me start again.
And finally, researchers have found that plants can make noise. According to a study published in the science journal Cell on Thursday, plants make clicking and popping sounds that are not audible to the human ear. But using a special ultrasonic microphone, researchers have been able to capture what these noises sound like across a variety of plant types. Let's take a listen.
All right. So what you heard were popping sounds. When there's a lot of fire, in the forest, there's also a lot of popping sounds. These are sounds that plants make when they are stressed. When they're under stress. So it's not just wood, no popping. These are actually messages that plants create to, communicate to each other. No? I presented this because this is actually a field where we cannot participate in because there's not a lot of space for us to enter. Okay, but this is a very important space in the same way that the use of the 11th harmonic is a good space that we can learn from, especially in situations where we have a lot of patients who don't have money for conventional cancer treatments, right? But we cannot participate there because we have not created the space for people to meet halfway, no? So let me just talk about the plants, no? There is a way of manufacturing the 11th harmonic through plants. Okay, so for plants that could physically produce something close to an 11th harmonic in audible range, the best candidates are hollow bamboo species, large dried reeds, and wind-excited hollow tree trunks. So we can, no, in a natural scenario, we don't need a highly sophisticated gadget, we can produce 11th harmonic. Now, if you look at the natural environment, plants produce sound that are close to, if not the exact 11th harmonic produced in the laboratory. So examples are the xylem cavitation clicks, The bamboo comes as natural resonant tubes. No, I won't discuss them anymore. The whole point of this is we have naturally occurring 11th harmonic, and they are produced by plants, like dried seed pods and grasses in wind, aeolian harp effects in tree leaves, and resonant cavities in large trees. So don't be surprised that when you are close to nature, you actually feel a lot better and you experience a lot of healing. No, it's so difficult to explain, but now that we see this, we're close to an explanation, right? So, what are the different academic fields that can open doors, for our participation in these intersections of arts and science? So, there's engineering, no? In engineering, there would be the involvement of noise and sound and spectral analysis within electronics, communications in the engineering. But is it the same? I don't think so. No, music and sound focus degrees. As you know, these frequencies are not necessarily music. The focus on music is more complex. No, so is it the same? Dealing with sound from creative and production perspective, maybe there is an opening there, but it's really not the same. Okay, or clinical audiology, which is oriented towards hearing science, audiological evaluation, and hearing care, intersecting with aspects of acoustics in the human auditory system. There we go. So we see the word, that actually captures this. It's the acoustic science that has a lot of art in it, right? So, and of course, music therapy, it is the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions. Again, this is music therapy. It's not necessarily acoustic, but there are some windows and doors there to open. So let me just relate this to what's happening in the Philippines, because as we advocate for greater integration of the arts and the sciences, we need to harmonize with the institutional and structural infrastructures, that allow us to develop it. Unfortunately, higher education in the Philippines has institutional and structural barriers to innovative programs. You cannot just create programs on acoustics without someone graduating from a degree in acoustics somewhere outside of the Philippines. How will you get there? How? So that's a big difficulty. And then it's founded on positivist principles that marginalize disciplines that are more complex or ambiguous. Let me tell you about publications. Now, publications is one way to share your findings, but in the music profession or in the visual arts, you cannot force them to, share their knowledge in the form of a, a journal article. It's different. No, the way knowledge is shared from the humanistic field is really more experiential. So there has to be a concert, there has to be some exhibition, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, even the way we sort of give value to researchers in this field, we force them to make publications, no? And not a lot of institutions understand why there has to be a distinction nowadays, no? Because there's very little discussion going on, no, in this area. The higher education in the Philippines does not allow space for emergent disciplines arising from research. Can we not develop a program such as the acoustic arts and sciences just based on the research output of a creative or a collaborative technical person? Is it even possible nowadays? But maybe it should be, right? And it does not invest in indigenous knowledge systems as basis for academic degrees. We have not yet seen something arising from, our indigenous culture that has become a science in itself, no, or sort of a mix of the arts and the sciences that allow us to sort of fix certain public health concerns or whatnot, no? So these are challenges. So my challenge is to artify, to open science, to innovate the process, and to co-design for society. For us to get there, we need holistic education. I'm really glad that in the senior high school program, we've completely eliminated the tracks. I think it's too soon for young people to make decisions about limiting their fields of engagement, no, especially in learning about the world. So right now we've completely eradicated those tracks, and we've allowed younger people to just learn from their interests, no, that it frees them. It allows for greater interdisciplinary researchers in the future. We need to have more inclusive themes. We need to have different kinds of people represented in the research teams that we create. Now, we need interdisciplinary orientation. Like, for example, I'll give an example myself. So I come from fine arts. I did some engineering courses as well. That's my entry point to UP. And then I finished in a social science communication. I teach research in 4 different colleges. And I'm able to do so because I understand those fields. I know the terminologies. I've immersed myself in those colleges when I was starting out in teaching. And now I'm able to cross the bridge, and I'm able to bring in ideas from other disciplines now into the classroom of particular colleges that were not initially accessible to them. So we need this interdisciplinary orientation of some sort. No, we need to make a way for that to happen. And of course, we need to have more people become more comfortable with ambiguity, that not everything has to be defined immediately. No, we can welcome, a phenomenon without any label. No, things can be understood as an emergent phenomenon, not so much with starting from a theory. No, so I think we need to sort of support that kind of uh, system. So I bring you back there. I think the nexus of art and science is here in the complexity, where you have a lot of artists, no, being found here, and we have a lot of scientists being engaged in the area of complexity, where the variables are not quite clear but need to be understood anyway. So going back, let me just share to you what the 11th harmonic sounds like. Since this is pure 11th harmonic. Okay, let me stop this. This is the naturally created 11th harmonic. Okay, there's a little mix of music here because it's used for yoga. So you see, there's a bed of 11th harmonic there. Okay, now the thing I want to share here is this. When you want to take your vitamin C, you can take the tablet in pure form vitamin C, or you can take a fruit, which also contains vitamin C. The pure 11th harmonic is your vitamin C. This bamboo, the the earlier sound, this one, no, it is the fruit. Um, it is an artifact that has a bed of 11th harmonic there. Okay, but it's not completely or pure 11th harmonic. One last, I want you to listen to the Tibetan monks chant. I want to mix the naturally occurring 11th harmonic. I want to play the pure 11th harmonic. You see, the 11th harmonic is the bed. It's there. All the variations are on the surface level. So what I want to say here is this, okay? I want to go back to Aristotle. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It means that when individual components, people, or ideas combine, they create a result more valuable, functional, or effective than the mere addition of their separate parts. And in this nexus of art and science, no, we are able to arrive at variations of solving the same problem. And some approaches will be better for some people, some approaches will be better for other people. And I think that's a more sensitive, more humane kind of designing for humanity, no, that we need to arrive at, no, so that we become more compassionate and more contextually sensitive. So often, no, this concept highlights synergy, where collaboration and interaction create unique emergent properties, and therefore we need to create a lot more people who are synthetic thinkers working together with people who are highly analytic thinkers for us to bridge the two together. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bantugan, for problematizing where art begins and where science ends, or where they kind of, the problematizing interdisciplinarity in our disciplines. And we appreciate the kind of work that you've been doing, breaking new ground and being able to dispute the misconception that artists are unable to problematize the sciences. So thank you very much. May I bring you now to Dr. Mario, please? Thank you very much again. Maraming salamat, Dr. Brian. Dr. Mario, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Capili, and congratulations, Dr. Bantugan, for such a very enlightening talk. Mamaya, we can probably talk about our programs, in the universities in the Philippines that somehow constrict, the merging or the meeting of arts and sciences, in many areas. Now, our next speaker is a mathematician. Dr. Mark Loyola will be talking about artistic expression in geometry, a tool for research and learning. Dr. Loyola is an associate professor and associate chair for graduate programs in the Department of Mathematics at the Ateneo de Manila University, where he earned his Doctor of Philosophy. He also had a stint at Sophia University in Tokyo under the Commission on Higher Education Sandwich Program. Currently, his research interests span discrete geometry, mathematical crystallography, and the use of technology in mathematics. So he has a long, resume, and I will allow Dr. Loyola to talk, and we will know him better and his interests. Dr. Loyola.
Thank you, Dr. Mario. So let me now share my screen. Okay, so again, good day, everyone. First, I would like to thank both NRCP and PAASE for the invitation to share my recent works. Today, I'll be sharing how artistic expression through visuals, models, and hands-on construction plays a meaningful role in both mathematical research and teaching/learning. My work sits at the intersection of research, teaching, and creative visualization. In research, I work in discrete geometry and mathematical crystallography. In teaching, I handle courses mostly for math majors and computer science majors. Now, along the way, I naturally gravitated toward using artistic expression like figures, visuals, and manipulatives to communicate and explore mathematical structures. It's really an indispensable part of the job. In fact, visuals have become essential in my practice, whether it's for papers, presentations, or explaining a concept in class. For me, geometry becomes much clearer when you can see it, manipulate it, or even build it. One of the first areas where creative visuals become important is in my research. Geometry is highly visual by nature, and constructing good figures often reveals patterns you might not notice initially. In discrete geometry and crystallography, we usually study very abstract objects. Therefore, clear visuals, especially well-crafted and artistic ones, help make those ideas accessible not only to specialists, but also to researchers in other fields. This tabular example, which appears in our most recent paper, deals with symmetry groups related to the Klein bottle, an example of a non-orientable surface. However, this artistic rendering highlights the same symmetry structures more clearly than tables or technical diagrams. With this rendering, we can see much better what eventually happens when you wrap a pattern of the plane around a Klein bottle. Now, another area that requires creative figures is the study of polyhedra. Rendering polyhedral structures with depth, color, and symmetry emphasizes their geometric and combinatorial properties, aiding explanation and communication. Instead of just algebraic computations as shown here on the left, we get a direct visual interpretation of these abstract concepts, which other scientists may find a lot easier to understand. Now, beyond communication, visuals can lead to new insights. For example, the vertex coloring of nanotube figures here made symmetries and repeating structures more apparent, which contributed to further observations. Additional insights include the identification of stable atomic arrangement based on symmetry alone. In fact, these colored figures allowed us to further extend our work beyond the scope of our initial study, leading to a publication on carbon nanotubes in one journal and on theoretical nanotubes in another. In another work, we examine torus tessellations in 4 dimensions, which are difficult to visualize due to the inherent complexity of higher dimensional spaces. Animations such as the one presented here clarify both algebraic and geometric relationships, making the study of a torus in 4 dimensions less daunting and more intuitive. Let me now shift to injecting art in teaching and learning. In the classroom, visuals and hands-on constructions improve student understanding of various mathematical concepts, even those that are not inherently geometric. Artistic elements help bridge the gap between abstract mathematics and intuitive understanding. Students often see patterns more clearly when they manipulate models or even build their own. In some of my classes, students recreate or design their own patterns using computer tools like Mathematica or SageMath, then fabricate them in our university's makerspace. These activities strengthen the students' conceptual understanding, while at the same time, also giving them a creative outlet where they can express their individuality by choosing their own colors, designing new shapes, experimenting with new ideas, and exploring what works. One of the recent works of my research groups involved the use of a laser to create tangible math objects. At the Arete, our university's creative hub, we use this industrial laser platform to engrave or cut acrylic sheets, producing precise mathematical objects. Actually, even if your university does not own such an equipment, you can actually purchase your own desktop laser platform from online stores such as our favorite Lazada and Shopee. These desktop laser platforms are powerful enough to reproduce the models that I will show later. Now, the first model I want to discuss is what we call a multi-layered acrylic tiling model. The acrylic layers here highlight different geometric and combinatorial properties such as vertices, faces, edges, and adjacencies. This sample model shows how stacking laser-cut acrylic sheets eventually produces a multi-layered tessellation. Students create the base layer, the blue one here, design carefully the other layers, like the middle pink one and the topmost white layer, stack and glue them together until they finally get the entire tessellation. This particular hands-on activity benefits, for example, visual and tactile learners. This next slide shows student outputs from my linear algebra for games programming class. Now, what I really appreciate about the student works is that beyond getting the mathematical aspects precisely, according to them, they also give equal attention to the artistic side by taking time to think about color themes, such as the Halloween themed acrylic piece here and the cool ocean themed one here. More student outputs here. And these are two more pieces that I personally find elegant and sophisticated. Now we also have here what we call laser cut string art. It is a modernized version of the traditional string art where nails are hammered on a wooden board. This particular model uses a clear acrylic sheet with laser cut holes. Colored strings are threaded to form patterns guided by mathematical rules, depending on what lesson is being emphasized. Like for this one here, finite groups are being emphasized. Now, string art can visualize advanced concepts like stereographic projection, where patterns on a sphere are mapped onto the plane. In the laser cut string art, we first create digital designs with user-selected hosts like the one shown on the left. We then feed this particular design on the laser platform, which will cut holes at precisely user-defined locations. The students then use color strings to highlight the edges they want to emphasize or to fill certain areas, creating the illusion of solid color. Lastly, we have also developed this manipulative, which teaches students properties of quadratic number fields, helping students visualize the abstract concepts of primes, units, associates, etc. Through this particular math toy, abstract concepts become colorful 2D figures, making theoretical concepts more tangible. In previous classes, I asked students to color printed worksheets to mark special numbers with particular properties. But with this manipulative, they can complete the same task faster, and it allows them to correct mistakes a lot more easily. Something that was difficult to do before when just using crayons on paper. Now, to end the short talk, I would just like to share some photos of events where these visuals and tangible objects were displayed. These projects appeared at events such as Pi Day in our university, where students and teachers alike explore these models. So they were also shown in an open house sponsored by our university's Creative Hub. From the back here are photos of Philippine banig and baskets being studied by the Ateneo Math, Art, Culture, and Creativity Research Lab. Also, during the NRCP's Creative Exhibit on its 92nd founding anniversary, held December of last year, here we have Dr. Tomenes shown here with an acrylic tiling model of a Philippine banig pattern shown here in the middle. And more recently, these toys, manipulatives, visuals were likewise shown during the Ateneo Grade School's Math, Science, and Technology Week, where grade school students get to play and explore these math toys. So just to end, I would just like to thank NRCP, PAASE, Ateneo SOSE, Arise, the Makerspace at Arete, and members of my research group. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Loyola, for such a fascinating talk, highlighting how artistic expression can actually enhance, mathematical learning. I wish we were doing that, in our geometry class in elementary and high school. Yeah, but it's really important. Again, I'll just repeat that by blending visual creativity with mathematical structure, it demonstrated how art can deepen understanding, spark curiosity, and broaden engagement with mathematics. It can also be used for research purposes, right? So maraming salamat. At this point, Dr. Capili and I will, invite everyone to ask your questions for our Q&A. Dr. Capili.
Yes, if there are questions, kindly post them in our chat box and we'll be gladly read them for you. So far, I've been trying to check. Uh, there are some questions, but we're trying to because they're kind of duplicating. There's this post from Chris Pulomarayan who says that I'm really inspired by your comment, Doctor. It's amazing how art and science can actually work together to teach people about important environmental issues. The roar of the ocean sounds like a creative way to show the impact of climate change and the importance of caring for our planet. Um, we also have the Q&A portion uh, sheet. I think we also want to remind you all to kindly uh, have your attendance checked, especially because we'll be awarding certificates to people who have been attending most of the talks. We also have this comment from Sheila CR. Listening to Dr. Palis's presentation brings to mind visioning exercises in which participants imagine a desired state using pictures and images. Visioning exercises are typical stakeholder engagement tools. Community leaders, project implementers, and policymakers can use visioning exercise to co-create plans and interventions with stakeholders. Um, we also have a question for Dr. Palis from Salome Sendrejas. Just thinking if there's an effort to merge or harmonize local map representation with technical maps, harmonizing technical and local wisdom in the process. I repeat to give Dr. Palis, my good friend, a chance to rethink question. Just thinking if there's an effort to merge, harmonize local map representation with technical maps, harmonizing technical and local wisdom in the process. Dr. Palis, please.
Thank you, Wendell. Great to see you too. I forgot to acknowledge earlier, meeting of friends. Uh, Thank you, Salome. I was answering Sheila earlier and Chris Piolo for the questions, and I apologize for not seeing your question. Let me answer it now here. Um, we have some effort about it. We did. We did do something. It verges. I do have to say it comes a little bit towards map art, right? Of course, I defer to Brian and Mark, who are probably much more attuned to artistic expressions in whatever they do when it comes to that. But there is a strong tradition of map art in counter cartography. So what we did was with GIS, there is now a way with which you can sort of fuse them together without losing some of the characters and maybe local color, if you will, in creating GIS maps. And we did that more for presentation purposes, pedagogically, meaning for our classes. We haven't done that yet for LGUs when we present this. So maybe that perhaps it would be the next step to work on it, and that would be a great fusion actually to do that. I don't think we have yet found a formula to make that work in a way that will satisfy, but we, as you probably could glean, we are such big fans of reflective research. We would like to think more of this as enrichment or redirection, so that we could do that. But we've done that before. But when you say something about harmonizing technical and local wisdom, that's so spot on, and we'll take that seriously in our next project. And also, let me take this quick presentation. I did ask a question for Mr. Maranan to Sheila, if I could use some of your comments for whatever it is that we do in the future. Just give me a thumbs up later in my comment, and of course, Salome, so that we could properly attribute you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Wendell.
Thanks very much. Dr. Mario, from your end.
Yes, now I guess we can ask the Dr. Brian to respond to the question of Chris Pulomaranan on the chat box. He has a question about the 11th harmonic and resonance medicine and interdisciplinary and artistic approaches.
Yes.
Dr. Brian?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the first item there. The assumption of the researcher who did the 11th harmonic research was that we can compare the human body as a crystal. Like every cell is a liquid crystal. So given that assertion, there should be a frequency that can shatter that liquid crystal. So the journey of that experiment was really finding the frequency that would shatter that liquid crystal, and that liquid crystal is the cancer cell. Okay, so that's the main assertion of that exploratory study. And with the follow-up question, are there ongoing studies exploring its clinical application in patients? I don't think it it can be found here in the Philippines. It definitely is being pursued in the US because this one has been discovered in the US. There should be follow-up studies, no, arising from that experimentation. But for now, I would probably say the closest that we can get to that kind of use of sound, no, to say address certain health concerns would be like music therapy. But again, music therapy does not go down to the level of frequencies. They're into the cultural practice, they're into the storytelling, they're into the audio experience, no? It's not particular to the frequency. And that is the difference, no, in the way the interdisciplinary research is being done in the US, it's being done in a laboratory, but here in the Philippines, it's being done in situ. Where people are living, that's where they are given the therapy and they're being addressed, no, in real time. There's no setting up of the laboratory. There's no setting up of the participant. There's nothing like that. It's never experimental. So I'd probably say if you want to get something close to, like, say, the use of a frequency to address health issues, music therapy would probably be the closest. There's music therapy in UP. We also have music therapy in St. Paul. So there are ways to look into it. And there's also music medicine, as I've told you, which is different from music therapy. And I think UP Manila would have something related to that. No, so that's the first question. Second is importance of complexity thinking. I would say, to address this question, that interdisciplinarity is not a memo. It is not a policy. It should be a culture that is developing within institutions. And when I say culture, people should be able to agree that they would talk about interdisciplinarity. Like talking about interdisciplinarity would be incentivized, creating spaces for people who have, say, similar interest in the science and the arts should be institutionalized. No, so there are many ways to bring this about. Now, but I think because St. Paul, where I work right now, is rather small, we don't have that difficulty of, destroying the walls that separate us. Now we cross the boundaries more frequently than bigger institutions. So maybe if you use that as an example, you probably should look at creating smaller conglomerates of disciplines, no, and try to infuse those disciplines with interdisciplinary thinking. That takes time, however. You can't just say we do it now and then it happens. I think you should provide for the culture to come out, no, naturally within specific conditions of institutions.
Thank you, Dr. Bantugan. I think there's another set of questions for for Joseph, but probably you can answer them, Joseph, by writing. Or I want to ask a question to Dr. Loyola, but first I'd like to read the comment of Elida Figelan about thanking this session for affirming the art and science fusion and establishing that there is really a continuum. I have been gingerly exploring this, but hesitant and a bit adamant to proceed. The presentation started enlightening and inspiring to me. Maraming salamat po. Now, a question for Dr. Mark Loyola. Dr. Bantugan already talked about policy and the need to actually institutionalize these programs or ideas. Now, I'm just wondering how common the techniques that you are using are in teaching or researching mathematics or geometry. I'm a community psychologist, so I'm looking at levels, from the teacher to the classroom, to the school, to the district, to the province, to the region, to the country, to global, to the world. So how, if it's so effective, why isn't it, being replicated, in other classrooms or other schools or other districts?
Yeah, yes, sir. Because I think because if you really want to inject, for example, creativity in subjects, that will take time. And given, for example, that we are limited, for example, classes, they're usually 1 hour or 1 hour 20 minutes, and you fit a lot of topics in a particular semester. Usually, it's difficult to find the time to inject this additional activities. So it's really very important that you find the time or you budget your semester so that you can find the time to inject this artistic works and let students do these creative activities. And I think that's the reason why it's not that common that activities like this are being done in the classroom.
Or
But I think,
perhaps just like
yes,
what Tugan is saying, that this is actually cultural, right?
yes,
It's
yes,
not,
that's right.
probably it's not only time,
Yes,
but
sir.
the ideology of it.
Mhm.
So do we have other questions, Dr. Capili?
Yes,
Or other
we do. We have a comment from Dr. Asuncion Raimundo from UP Los Baños. And she says, I'm very glad to listen to this kind of discussion. It's a fusion of arts and sciences, a program we started when I was Dean of UPLB College of Arts and Sciences. Just last year, we mounted a major theatrical production in collaboration with artists and cultural workers from UP Los Baños and the broader community, the Laguna community around the areas around Laguna de Bae. So it's entitled The Wake of the Lake, The Roar of the Ocean, a theatrical interrogation of water memory. It was done by Water Memory, Climate Crisis, and Stewardship. The production was directed by Dennis Gupa, who coincidentally happened to be my student. He's now teaching at the University of Winnipeg, and several faculty members from UP Los Baños. Si Dennis is now University of Winnipeg, where he is integrating science, environmental advocacy, performance, and creating interdisciplinary platform for public engagement on pressing ecological issues. So thank you very much, Dr. Asuncion, for being here and for listening to our talks. Thank you very much, Dr. Mario. I'll go over the
Yes,
other messages.
so I guess we are now ready to wrap up this session. My probably my last comment before I call on Dr. March Peña, our president, is I really appreciate all the ideas presented today, and I wish we can continue this conversation. My lament about the academies that is still practicing disciplinolatry, really very much constrained within our own disciplines, that we forget that everything is interrelated, and so but then our disciplines are not following this interdisciplinary theme, and we are constrained by just being a major in one subject. Yeah, that's right. Also, actually my question for you is that why haven't we gone into like double majors or minors in our universities, where students can actually explore and become masters of different genres or different different fields. I have a student who double majored in musical composition and biology, and he wrote a thesis on female songbirds. And now he's a PhD in neuroscience, studying about listening to music. So see how structures can actually make a difference if we have those opportunities for our students. So just like just my my 1 cent, and I guess now we are ready to wrap up this program. If there's no other comment, yes. We now call on Dr. March, or we are going to actually award certificates. Yes, certificates. Sorry. Yeah. Can we now show their certificates?
You may read them, Dr. Mario, for our friend
Okay,
Joseph
po.
Palis.
Our first certificate of appreciation for Dr. Joseph Palis for being our speaker at the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering and the National Research Council of the Philippines, titled Merging Artistic Expression and Scientific Excellence, held on February 27th, presented this day. With our deepest gratitude, Dr. Maria Margaret O. Peña, President of PAASE, and Dr. Maria Luis Antoinette de las Peñas, President of NRCP. Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph Palis. And now, Dr. Capili, can you read the next one?
Yes, we have our next certificate of appreciation for Dr. Brian S. Bantugan for being our speaker at the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering and National Research Council of the Philippines, titled Merging Artistic Expression and Scientific Excellence, held on February 27, 2026, signed Dr. Marie Margaret Peña, President of PAASE, and Dr. Luis Antoinette de las Peñas, President of the National Research Council of the Philippines. Dr.
Thank you.
Brian.
And the third certificate for Dr. Mark Loyola, being our speaker of PAASE and NRCP webinar titled Merging Artistic Expression and Scientific Excellence, presented this day, February 27th, signed Dr. Maria Margaret O. Peña, PAASE President, and Dr. Maria Luis Antoinette de las Peñas, President of NRCP. Maraming pong salamat and congratulations. Let's continue this.
Dr. Wendell.
Now we are going to call on Dr. March Peña.
Dr. Marge, welcome.
Hello. Good evening, good morning, everybody. And I would like to congratulate everyone for this very fascinating webinar. It is something that we have not done in PAASE, and in partnership with NRCP, we have started something very unique and very fascinating that we can pursue in many directions. And Mario, just to answer your questions, I would like to tell you that at the University of South Carolina, where I am, we have actually started this project. So we had a project which was started by one of our biology professors in collaboration with the music professor. They had 6 undergraduate students in biology, and both graduate and undergraduate students team up with students, also graduate and undergraduate students who are in the music department, in composition and different kinds. And their project was to determine what is the sound of a mutation, genes and codons, the way we mix them together. So when Dr. Bantugan was telling us to listen to the sounds of plants in stress, we were trying to identify what is the sound of genes being mutated and when they mutate into cancer. So it's really fascinating that we're using this 11th harmonics. I'm a cancer researcher myself, and now I have to I'm digging up all the literature as you were talking to figure out how I can give this to my cancer cells and see if they can pop and find a new way of treating them. So thank you very much. You just opened a whole new dimension to our science and added a new way of looking at science through the artistic mind, the cartography and everything. So thank you very much. And I hope that this will actually begin. This is the first of our activity in our partnership and collaboration. And so I hope that we will have more of this in the future and be able to actually not just talk about it, but begin collaborations with everyone. I invite you to join our APAMS meeting in 2026 and actually meet the scientists and engineers which we can collaborate with in the projects that you are doing. So to Dr. Maria Luis de las Peñas, I finally meet you virtually. To all our speakers, to all our moderators, congratulations on this wonderful event. And what it really shows you is that what we have discussed today has really reminded us that art and science are not really separate endeavors. They're parallel endeavors that can be joined together, and we can come up with many different journeys that are driven by our curiosity, our love for art, and our love for science. And so I guess what we can do is, together with this partnership that we have, we can begin to shape science to the eyes of the artists and actually meld these things together. When I was listening to Dr. Palis's talk about geo storytelling, geo narratives, it really shows very insightful ways by which we can dive deep into geography and not just look at the maps and everything, but actually come up with the stories that define those maps. As you say, these are fleeting moments that are captured to the minds of these people. And it's really fascinating just looking at the pictures that you have presented, that you actually are able to tell the lives of the peoples and the influence of our environment, our politics, into just seeing it in an illustration. And so I already mentioned Dr. Bantugan, listening to you as a cancer researcher and knowing that we're also pursuing this in our college really is very inspiring. And actually this project that we have with the music department was actually funded by the National Science Foundation. So it's really fascinating that we are making headways into that. And so hopefully this can be repeated in many other institutions, because when the professors started this, they really didn't know what they were doing. They just put themselves together and came up with it, and printed their stories, and were able to actually begin a whole new conversation, not just in looking at mutations, but also using notes to define the codon, the scientific codon that is our genetic material. So it's really fascinating, and I hope that this picks up and is also being multiplied, not just in one place, but in all places across the country. And so I think hopefully what we have started today begins collaborations between artists and science. And actually, we're still structured with the way that we define what goes into a degree. And so I think we need to give students a little bit of leeway to choose what they can. And so we're beginning to do that in our institutions, where students can actually design the courses that they want within the constraints, to have a full education that is well-rounded, not just focused on your majors, but also being aware of the environment and the arts and how you can weave things together. So I think this should be the start of a conversation for making curriculums more flexible, so that we can actually design things and begin merging art, science, and engineering and everything together, so that we can move forward and actually have a holistic view of education. And also to Dr. Loyola, my husband's a mathematician, and so whenever he writes these formulas, my eyes just glaze over. But the way that you presented it, melding arts into geometry, I'm not really good at geometry, but when you put it that way and show it, this is fascinating, because now we can get our kids interested in geometry and not run away in fear, but actually look at it with new eyes and really appreciate the things that you can make. Because that's what geometry is all about. When you just look at the numbers, sometimes it doesn't mean anything to people, but when you put in the shapes, now it begins to look beautiful, and you can engage. We can actually begin to engage students, not just at the college level, but high school, elementary level, and tell them, this is what it means, this is what you're looking at, not just memorizing formulas or trying to derive something. And so I think we can all work together to make this happen. And so I really look forward to collaborating with all of you on this particular projects. And I'm going to go run to we're organizing the APAMs, and hopefully Coco is here somewhere. I saw his name. He is my co-convener for these annual meeting and symposium, which is taking place in May in Las Casas, Filipinas. And hope we can probably put this something in person that we can actually disseminate to people who are there and stimulate the interest in merging together both science and artistic pursuits, so that we can come up. This should not just be ending in this webinar. We should put this out and bring this out to the students, and hopefully we can increase, by putting art together with science, we will make it more interesting and more fascinating for everybody. So thank you very much. I did not know what to expect when we started this, but I'm really happy that we started this, and I hope we have many more of these collaborations together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PAASE President March Peña. Maybe you can invite Dr. Palis, Dr. Bantugan, and Dr. Loyola to talk.
Yes, we need to have a session that talks about this. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so maraming salamat po. I believe this ends our 2 hours, actually a bit more than 2
Yeah,
hours.
it was worth it.
Talking, yes. So this is just the beginning, and I wish there would be, more to come. Part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
very much, Dr. Capili.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mabuhay po ang NRCP at mabuhay po ang PAASE. Thank you.
Buhay po tayong lahat. Salamat.
Everyone, please open your cameras so that we can take a picture.
I think we'd like everyone to turn on their cameras so we can have our group picture. We will begin with the first batch. I
Okay
think.
po. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Page 2 po. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Page 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Page 4 po. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Page 5. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Last page po. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay na po.
Thank you very much. Mabuhay po
Thank you
kayong
very
lahat.
much.
Salamat po.
Thank you, everybody.
Very much.
Thank you po. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. George.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you po.
Maraming salamat po sa lahat.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Secretariat. Salamat, NRCP Secretariat.
Thank you,
Salamat,
George.
Mar. Thanks, Wendell.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Wendell.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Dr.
everyone.
Maria, Dr. Wendell. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Mark.
po. Thank you po.
Salamat po. Salamat.
Talk to you again.
Si Dr. Helen Dayo, I just saw her.
Hello.
Hi,
Yes.
hello.
Hi, Wendell.
Hello,
How are you?
hello.
Hi, Mario.
Hello. Hello, Helen. Long time no see.
A long time no see. It's been years. Actually, 3. Yeah.
Yeah.